What's poppin', yo? OG Maco has reportedly passed away. It's been confirmed by his family. They even put out a statement recently on Instagram. And this is coming on the backs of 2 weeks of him in critical condition in the hospital. So initially it was reports that he had died, and then someone close to him said, no, he's not actually dead. I'm with him right now. So that caused a lot of people to retract the reports, me being included in one of those people. And since then, we've kind of just been waiting, and now it's over. And it was from a gunshot wound. And OG Maco is one of those artists where I actually have some history with, in terms of not just someone I listened to, but someone I was fond of. I remember interacting with him on 2 separate occasions. And this will lead into why I think his situation is a perfect example of luck or lack thereof being such a contributing factor that we neglect when it comes to a lot of people's career trajectory or their career being halted. And also why I have such a degree of respect for him and have had a degree of respect for him for the past 10 years. So it started out, obviously, you guessed it, popped off, right? That was one of the first things. So I started following OG Maco. At the time, I was just plugged into any and everything underground, hip hop, whatever was taking off. It blew up off of Vine. So I start following OG Maco on Twitter. You get to see in his opinions, you get to see his personality. He was pretty abrasive, he was opinionated, but he would always be interacting with fans. So I had a bunch of interactions with him on my old Twitter account, the one that I had before I even had the previous one. So only the people that really knew me back then even know this account. And he was always really supportive of fans, people talking to him. So those were the interactions I had with him back then. But there was a Vlad interview where he really opened up, and Vlad surprisingly didn't throw a flashback of this one. He mentioned the skin or the flesh-eating disease, but I want to read 2 quotes from this Vlad interview that came from OG Maco. And OG Maco was a big fan and was heavily inspired by Kid Cudi. So much so that his second project, which was in 2016, it was a mixtape. I think it got put on streaming after. It was The Lord of Rage. And the rage thing came from Kid Cudi. But granted, people were saying he copied Travis Scott because in 2015, Travis Scott dropped Rodeo and he's talking about the rage and raging and all of that. But they both got it from Kid Cudi. So in this album, you can kind of feel the energy that OG Maco was coming with. It wasn't the same. There was a different level of production. But at this time, a lot of things were happening that were hectic in OG Maco's career. He was one of the original artists on QC the label, so he starts having issues with the record label. I don't know exactly the details of that, but they pretty much shut down promotion of him for how big he was and how much attention his music was getting. I mean, you gotta think, Keith Ape's career launched off of the back of OG Maco's song. That's how big this guy was. And then it just seemed like all of the attention, resources, etc. shifted to Lil Yachty. And then this one was actually pretty funny, the OG Maco Roach meme or emoji. If you were on forums back then, it wasn't so much on Twitter. It populated Twitter, but people used this to clown OG Maco because of the abrasive personality he had. They didn't necessarily think he was a bad person. This was just people kind of lashing out, and not lashing out. They just wanted to clown him. Now, there was an audio that leaked of OG Maco's ex-girlfriend, and rumors start spreading about OG Maco having AIDS. In this recording, he's kind of crying in it, and people start clowning him for that, obviously. But then he addresses this in the Vlad interview, and he says this quote. He says, "I even had to listen to the recording myself to realize how close I was to not being here. You know what I'm saying? How close I was to offing my damn self." And then Vlad says, "Oh, so you were going to take yourself?" He's like, "Yeah, I was. I was extremely, ass dog. I'm going to keep it 1,000. I woke up one night with my gun in my hand." You know what I'm saying? And no, this is a true story. You had a loaded gun. I had a loaded gun in my hand. I woke up with it, which is insane because it's 2016, 8 years later, that's exactly what happened in the exact same way. And he details that he was on acid and really tripping out on some psychedelics when he called his girlfriend. And he didn't really address this, the AIDS thing, until that interview. So people just kept running with that for a while. But later on in the same interview, he talks about something which I believe he struggled with ever since that time. And the conversation was surrounding Kid Cudi. And Vlad was saying how Kid Cudi is a really, really successful artist. When Kid Cudi goes on tours, he's doing big, big, big numbers. And then OG Maco's response is, you're thinking about that as a person who's talking about money. I'm not talking about money either, responds Vlad. And he's like, I'm talking about like he has real fans. And then OG Maco details, that's his fans though. You don't have to be a Ye fan to appreciate what Kanye has done. But you have to be a Kid Cudi fan to appreciate what Cudi's done, even though it's the same realm. And this is one of those things where I feel like it was illustrated so beautifully, but a lot of people, I wouldn't say a lot of people, I would say he said something that is so simple and a lot of us feel, but we can't really put it into words, which is there are artists that are very influential and they have strong fan bases on their own, but they don't get the recognition of said contribution or influence, and that frustrates them. So it's more so the attention and recognition. It's not that they're not making enough money, because a lot of them are making enough money, and they potentially don't even care to have much more money, just the recognition that comes with it. And then he says, because I don't need everybody to call me the greatest artist of all time. I don't need people to even listen to my music, but to act like the presence I brought, the innovation I brought, the freedom I gave artists of this generation, to act like that didn't happen, it eats at me. And there was interactions between OG Maco and XXXTentacion. XXX saying that there was a level of influence that OG Maco had on his career. Granted, I believe X made significantly better music than OG Maco, but that's not really the conversation here. The one thing that I wanted to mention that I really, really, really respected OG Maco for was him talking about his experience with drugs, him kicking the drugs, but then calling out Future. So if you guys may not remember, especially if you're a bit younger, is 2015 Future was scorching hot. And you're probably like, man, Future is hot right now. Yeah, but Future's been hot. 2015 was like Future skyrocketing in heat. I mean, we're talking Beast Mode, 56 Nights, Monster, and you had March Madness that was going crazy, Codeine Crazy that was doing numbers, him linking up with Drake. Like, everything was booming. And a lot of this was Drake stuff. But OG Maco calls him out. And keep in mind, this is a risky play. Like, they're both in Atlanta. Their teams are cool with each other, or like at least QC is cool with Future. And he decides to go out there and call out the drug culture and the praise that people were putting, or the pedestal that Future was putting drugs on and making it seem cool. And one of the quotes that he said was, I love Future, but also I understand Future has destroyed countless lives by making it cool to be a drug addict. 56 Xans ain't cool. And then Future got asked about OG Maco's tweet, and then he responded that he need to rap about what he rap about. He needs to get out there and start rapping church Bible verses, and then he won't have an opinion on hip hop. And I think this aged so magnificently, because we look at, this was in 2015. You know who was a product of this? Juice WRLD was a product of this. This is probably around the same time Juice WRLD really started doing drugs like that. He said Future got him into drugs, and he had like 56 pills, or who knows how many pills. He had a ton of pills that he died with. And I don't know how Future feels about that behind the scenes, but they eventually get cool. OG Maco has a talk with Future, but OG Maco was not getting any support. Like, you guys probably think right now, yeah, some people would say, okay, we understand. Like, OG Maco's got a point. It was not like that. They were frying. They were absolutely frying OG Maco. Because keep in mind, you guessed it, had just come out. They were looking at him as a Vine or like TikTok. I guess like it was like a quote unquote TikTok hit, a Vine hit, a one hit wonder. And Future just is on a crazy run. He's the coolest thing out. You're just hating on Future and you're just trying to get attention. Yet that's what makes it so respectable that he did this. It was a principled stance that he took. He didn't care that it was potentially going to harm his career, connections, whatever else, but he went with it anyway. And then to circle back to, or to address the luck point, OG Maco's just suffered a ton of bad luck. Number one, from the business stuff, which you could potentially say is maybe his own doing behind the scenes. He was difficult to deal with. I don't know. I didn't hear about anything like that, but he got into that accident where he damn near almost lost an eye. So you're already losing momentum from that, and like your life just sucks at that point. I think he lost his girlfriend that he had at that point. He was with some blue-eyed white chick. I don't remember her name. I think she was a brunette. I remember her vividly because people were clowning him, saying that she was so pretty and he was so ugly. Like this is how much, not hate, but how much constant criticism. Nah, that's hate. Not everything he was getting was hate, but this specifically was hate. But how much constant negativity he was being fed. And then, of course, later on, the flesh-eating disease, which people were already calling him ugly, and then you fighting for your life, your skin's falling off, the amount of money that costs, you losing your connections. It's really a shock that he was able to survive for this long. And it's not like he had a resurgence or anything. So I think this entire time, he's probably just been thinking like, yo, is it over? And this is the thing too. If you were there during that era, now you hear like OG Parker everywhere. But that's OG Maco. And I don't know if he said this, but whenever I hear OG Parker, I just think OG Maco. And it was like OGG was the thing that they had going on right now, or back then. And then Larry June, obviously, like OG Maco showed crazy support to Larry June even back then. Larry June is killing it. Shout out to him. I know a couple of people that don't even really listen to hip hop like that, but they just mess with Larry June and his whole movement. But OG Maco was really a special character, and to see him go out the way that he did it's just sad, man. But a lot of this music game is luck. Now, granted, his life, he was lucky to survive both of the things that he survived. And then, I mean, we don't know the reasoning, but it looks like he just had enough. And also that statement that he made about people don't gotta listen to him. I haven't listened to anything OG Maco for maybe 5 years or so. We had some brief DM exchanges about Kanye's clothes like a year ago or so. So it's not like I was listening to his music. That was just conversation. But I haven't listened to his music for years upon years upon years. And even if you look at the music streams, it's not really doing anything, right? Like you look at The God of Rage, which came out in 2021. You don't have any song. You have barely 2 songs that are doing above 10,000 streams, which is probably worse than anything he's done since he first started rapping. Yet he was still trying to put stuff out. And I wasn't listening to this, but whenever I heard OG Maco or like he came into conversation, it was still respect put on his name for what he did and for what he accomplished at the time and for what he started, which a lot of people would go on to not copy, I would say, but he was a spark and he was a moment. And while I would say he at times back then would overstate how much he had done, the fact that he was willing to actually help other artists out, help producers out, and do whatever he could for people that he thought were talented and bring in a little bit of a new sound, because OG Maco used to be in a band before he even started rapping, which is another fun fact that people may not know. Like, the guy was a guitarist and a singer before he even got into rap, and it was he was the first artist signed to QC. So he was in so many different moments that were integral to the development of hip-hop in the past 10 years. Or like some of the biggest hip-hop highlights. And I think he just felt like he fell to the wayside. Like everybody else from Atlanta was getting attention, and Yachty, who he saw come from nothing, is now working with Drake, and he was just like still trying to scrap it together. Like I hadn't heard anything from him for 3+ years. So this is a really, really sad case, unfortunately. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. What experience did you have with OG Maco's music? Did you follow much of the storyline? Were you there when he blew up? What were your opinions of him during his blow up, right? Like, be honest here. Like, I'm personally not going to judge you. Like, if you say, like, yo, I thought OG Maco was arrogant, he was annoying, he overstated himself, like, his music wasn't even that good, like, feel free to say that. You don't got to cap. I'm not going to judge you for having an opinion on the guy, on how the guy was in your eyes, even if he's passed away. So let me know. I want to see people's thoughts on that. And if you didn't know who he was, just be like, nah, I had no idea who he was until now. Let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for watching. Peace.